This is part 2 to the video entitled Footprint Fabrication. David Rose, a journalist for Vanity Fair who assisted in the investigation for the appeal, states the footprint found the authorities used to convict Carlton was a size 9.5. How do you squeeze a size 13.5 foot into a 9.5 shoe?
Criticism of you in the Ledger-Inquirer in Columbus. The author talks about how for a couple hundred pages you didn't say you were a paralegal in this case. Talk about your access to this case. Were you a paralegal? And your interviews with Carlton Gary.
Well, for a long time, I got drawn into this slowly from about 1996, and as soon as I looked at this case, I thought it just stank. I'd actually gone to Georgia initially to write an article for a British newspaper about the death penalty, and I went to Columbus because Columbus had sent more people to death row than anywhere else in Georgia, and indeed per capita may well have sent more people to death row than anywhere else in the United States. And, I'd begun to find out about the case, and all kinds of things intrigued me. One of the most extraordinary things is that the defense had absolutely no money. They had no funding at all with which to defend Carlton Gary, and of course this was a very complex case with all kinds of scientific evidence that has turned out to be extremely questionable. But a senior judge, the chief judge of the circuit, a guy called John Land, who had a very interesting family background, had made decisions which meant he had no funding. And so as I started gradually to get drawn in, I went to visit Carlton many times. I think I've seen him 10 times now. I began to dig up evidence that further undermined the prosecution's case, which, beyond what had already come out of his state appeals, he was now in the federal court, in his federal habeas corpus appeal. And I felt that if I was coming up with evidence that could exonerate this man, I had a simple moral duty to share it with the defense. It would be wrong to stack up evidence over perhaps a period of years, and as indeed turned out to be the case. I was working on this for about 9 years, which would then, if I didn't give it to the lawyers, they might miss a filing deadline. He could literally be executed on a technicality, in the sense there could be evidence out there which might well have got him a new trial, but he wouldn't get one because his lawyers had not filed it in time. So I said, look, I'm basically working as an investigator here. Why don't you make me officially a paralegal investigator? And I've been completely transparent about this. Well, okay, I mentioned it on page 200, but that's just where it happens in the narratives. Although he couldn't produce any evidence that this was in fact the case. I've since found evidence to show that it's quite clear that he didn't, in the form of footprints that the killer left in the murdered woman's apartment, and forensic tests that were done on those footprints by the scientists in New York in 1970, and what they showed is that the killer there had size 9.5 shoes, whereas Carlton Gary has size 13.5 or 14 shoes. He has unusually large feet. So there's good reason to suppose that he didn't do that murder, but belief that he had was really why Columbus Police Department made him a suspect. And then there was, as I say, this mysterious phone call from God to the detective, which put him on the scent.
You decide.